Okay, today we're going to talk about percent proportions. So it is taking a proportion like we talked about in the last section with two ratios typically set in fraction form and then equal to each other. We're only really going to ever use this if they're asked to find a percent. So if the question specifically says find the percentage or find a percent, or if you need to apply the percent to find a missing number in a second ratio. So you're given a percent here and then you need to use it to find a number. So let's talk about what that first ratio is, because we know in all proportions we've always got to figure out what the first ratio is and its units so we can set up the second one. Here in percent proportion, I always like to use the percent as my first ratio, except for I don't include the percent symbol when I put it over 100. And remember, it's out of 100 because percents are always out of 100. So my first ratio is whatever the percent is, and it's going to be over 100. Okay, so let's write down the percent proportion. So it still looks like two fractions set equal to each other. The first one we just said is the percent over 100. So instead of the percent sign here, you would put in whatever number is the percent, and then that equals what we call is over of. Okay, we got to think of is as whatever the part of the problem is, and of as whatever the total of the problem is. So I like to think of kind of as out of. So when we say out of, we're talking about that is the total. So if there's 3 students out of 20, 3 is the part, 20 is the total. Okay, so let's apply this to a practice problem. So this says 12 is 20% of what number? Because the first ratio I'm looking for is always the percentage, I try to find either the symbol that is the percent symbol or the word percent. I see the symbol here, so I'm going to take that 20% and I'm going to write it as a ratio without the percent sign over 100, so 20 over 100. Then we always have an equal sign and a second ratio. The second thing I look for is the words of, and I see of and is. So I want to look for of first. My little trick is I like to put the word out right before the word of and then read the second half of that sentence. So this says out of what number? Out of what number? Well, what number is indicating that I'm not sure the number yet. So I always put a variable in a place where I'm not sure what the number is, and then I reread that sentence. So it says out of X. That means my second ratio is out of X instead of out of 100. But because 100 is here, I'm going to put X in the similar location in the second ratio. So 100 is in my denominator and of the first ratio, and that was out of 100. X is in the denominator of my second ratio, and it said out of X. So they represent similar things. Then I look for my is. I see the word is right here, and it says 12 is 20%. So I have my 20% in the numerator. It tells me 12 is also similar to the percentage because that's what that is telling me. I put the 12 in the numerator. So 12 is 20%. 12 and 20 should go in the same parts of the ratios. 20 is just in the numerator of the percent ratio. 12 is in the numerator of the second ratio. Okay, from there, we know our steps for solving proportions. So we're going to cross multiply and get 20 times X and 100 times 12. I calculate my cross products from that. So 20 times X is 20X. 100 times 12 is 1,200, 1,200. And then I set my cross products equal to each other. From there, I have to solve that equation. So 20X equals 1,200. I solve by dividing both sides by 20, and I end up getting X is equal to 60. So here in this problem, 12 is 20% of 60. So that means out of 60 things, we have 12 of them. Okay, go ahead and try the practice. And, oh, I'm sorry, actually, we're going to do a practical problem next. So we're going to take a look at how this would look when we are dealing with a problem like this. So this problem says, you scored a 79% on your last test. The test was out of 51 points. find the number of points that you got correct. So again, we're always looking for the percent, either the word or the sign. I see the sign here, not the word, so I'm going to take that 79 and I'm going to set it up in a ratio over 100. Okay, I know I'm going to have an equal sign and a second ratio. And then what I start looking for is either out of or is. So I like to find out of first, which I see, out of 51 points. That tells me my second ratio is out of 51 as opposed to out of 100 in the first ratio. And then it's asking me to find the number of points that I got correct. Well, I know that correct points is similar to the percentage I got correct, which means I'm putting an X in the numerator because I'm asked to find it. I'm not told it. So I set up that second ratio, and then I do my steps. We're going to cross multiply first. We get 100 times X, and then 79 times 51. Once I do that, I come up with my cross products. So my first cross product is 100X. My second cross product after 79 times 51 is 4,029. I set them equal to each other, and then I need to solve this equation by dividing both sides by 100. I get 40.29. Okay? Because it's a word problem, we like to go ahead and write our answer in sentence form. Here, logically, I cannot and have never seen a teacher give a 0.29 worth of points. So what we're going to end up doing, even though it doesn't tell us to do this in the problem, we want to go ahead and round this problem to the whole number spot by looking at the 2 directly after the decimal. So this is really 40 points. Okay, so what that tells me is that my percentage was actually rounded in the original problem. So in word form, we're going to say the number of points I got correct was 40, or I could say something like I got 40 points correct, or I received 40 points. As long as it's telling you what the 40 is, then you're fine. All right, go ahead and ask any of us questions, seek us for help, or go ahead and get started on the practice.